Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Spectre here for another edition of Midnight Rider. Good to have you aboard. On the broadcast here this afternoon, we are going to talk a little bit about the goings on behind the scenes of some of the old governors. Yes, a little fighting back, if you will. Some governors in the crosshair. Obviously, things going on pertaining to Governor Cuomo up in New York. Definitely the recall efforts against Newsom out in California. Murphy got his own share of issues going on out in New Jersey. Got Whitmer up in Michigan, and even old Pritzker here in Illinois. All are taking on some heat. And of course, is the 10th Amendment still alive and well? Well, we're going to talk about that as it pertains to abortions, organ harvesting, Second Amendment pushback, and heck, we're even going to get into a little bit of Aussie news here in regards to big tech and their fight that they have taken to Australia as well. So stick around. We'll see you back here in just a moment. Rule number 1. Power is not only what you have, but what the enemy thinks you have. Rule number 2. Never go outside the expertise of your people. Rule number 3. Whenever possible, go outside the expertise of the enemy. Rule number 4. Make the enemy live up to its own book of rules. Rule number 5. Ridicule is man's most potent weapon. Rule number 6. A good tactic is one your people enjoy. Rule number 7. A tactic that drags on too long becomes a drag. Rule number 8. Keep the pressure on. Never let up. Rule number 9. The threat is usually more terrifying than the thing itself. Rule number 10. The major premise for tactics is the development of operations that will maintain a constant pressure upon the opposition. Rule number 11. If you push a negative hard enough, it will push through and become a positive. Rule number 12. The price of a successful attack is a constructive alternative. Rule number 13. Pick the target, freeze it, personalize it, and polarize it. Lest we forget, at least an over-the-shoulder acknowledgement to the very first radical, from all our legends, mythology, and history, and who is to know where mythology leaves off and history begins, or which is which? The first radical known to man who rebelled against the establishment and did it so effectively that he at least won his own kingdom, Lucifer, by Saul Alinsky. This has been yet another PSA by Breaking Spectre. Alright, welcome back everybody. Like I said on the broadcast here today, we're going to get into what has been going on with several of the governors around the country here, the pushback and some other odds and ends, as well as, like I said prior to the intros and that, we're going to get into even the pushback from the nation states like Australia and what's been going on with them and Google and Facebook here as of late. So let's just get into it here momentarily. Before I do want to thank you guys for tuning in over on the YouTube side as well as Twitch. Got that up and going. D-Live took a little bit here, but we got her going here as the intro on that was playing. And of course, I can't forget about our friends over on the Tiger Network side. Appreciate Jim and company over there for tuning in. So good to have you guys aboard there as well. All right, so like I said, out of Epoch Times, let's start with old Cuomo up in New York. What's going on with him? Well, GOP senators call for an investigation of Cuomo's potentially criminal actions. Yeah, they're not alleging, they're not stating exactly, but potentially criminal actions. And I think if anybody has paid any attention at all over the past year, we know exactly how criminal those allegations are at the end of the day. So 9 Republicans on the Senate Judiciary Committee are calling on the panel's chairman, Senator Dickie Durbin, out of Illinois, to convene public hearings on New York Governor Andrew Cuomo's potentially criminal, quote-unquote, placing of CCP virus patients in nursing homes. The call for hearings follows media reports that one of Cuomo's top aides, Melissa DeRosa, admitted to New York state legislators that the governor and his staff purposefully withheld information about sending CCP virus patients to nursing homes, where the disease rapidly spread to aging residents of the facilities. The CCP virus is also known as a novel coronavirus, novel, and causes the disease COVID-19. We were in a position where we weren't sure if what we were going to give to the Department of Justice or what we give to you guys, and we start saying, was going to be used against us while we weren't sure if there was going to be an investigation, DeRosa said in a video conference call that was obtained by the New York Post. As a result, more than 9,000 individuals died in the nursing homes, but Cuomo and his staff only acknowledged in official reports about 6,000. The actual count could go as high as 13,000, according to New York Attorney General Letitia James. We now know that Cuomo's administration actively concealed the level of admissions and intentionally underreported these admissions in a way that callously and recklessly put facility residents in danger and resulted in an unknown number of deaths, the GOP lawmakers told Durbin in a February 17th letter, which we can find there. The Associated Press now reports that the number of admissions was greater than 9,000 COVID-19 patients, 40% higher than what the state health department previously released, the senator said. That so many people needlessly lost their lives because of the failed policies of Governor Cuomo's administration, an administration that many have lauded over the past year, is tragic and deserves a full investigation and accounting. These new revelations, however, that Governor Cuomo's administration withheld information from the DOJ and intentionally misled federal officials to avoid political accountability, is more than irresponsible. It is very possibly criminal. Those who deliberately withheld or directed others to withhold material information from the DOJ may be guilty of obstruction of justice, violating the False Claims Act and numerous other criminal violations. The 9 signers of the letter include Senator Chuck Grassley, the ranking Republican, as well as Senators Lindsey Graham, Ted Cruz, John Cornyn, Mike Lee, Josh Hawley, Tom Cotton, Tom Tillis, and Marsha Blackburn. The letter signers told Durbin they will challenge Justice Merrick Garland, President Joe Biden's nominee to be Attorney General, to open a full DOJ investigation. But a DOJ probe would be conducted behind closed doors, and the letter signers believe the Judiciary Committee, therefore, should convene public hearings to ensure timely and public accountability for those who played politics with COVID-19 at the expense of the lives of American senior citizens, the signers said. Holding hearings on potential federal criminal activity related to the reckless endangerment of American seniors in a global pandemic would send a strong signal that you take DOJ oversight and the lives and rights of American seniors seriously, the signers told Durbin. Cuomo has become something of an international celebrity as a result of his daily briefings on his actions. He was awarded an International Emmy in November by the International Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. The governor's 111 daily briefings worked so well because he effectively created television shows with characters, plot lines, and stories of success and failure. The Academy's president and CEO Bruce Paisner said in a statement announcing his group's decision to give the award to the New York governor. People around the world tuned in to find out what was going on, and New York Tough became a symbol of the determination to fight back, Paisner said in the statement. And during the 2020 presidential campaign, Biden described Cuomo's actions in the pandemic as, quote, sort of the gold standard. More recently, however, Biden has appeared to be putting some distance between himself and Cuomo. How sick is that? The fact that they treat this all as a show. Just for their personal pleasure. Just never mind the fact there's actual lives at stake. These people are sick. Out of breaking 911, de Blasio unloads on Cuomo. Backs Dem, who says he was threatened. The bullying is nothing new. So apparently, there's a bit of infighting in the Dem party. And of course, if you know a little Sun Tzu action, never get in the way of the enemy while they're in the process of destroying themselves. So you get this, says as the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office in Brooklyn are probing the state of New York's handling of data related to coronavirus deaths in nursing homes, things are looking worse for Governor Andrew Cuomo, Fredo's brother, right? During an interview on MSNBC, Democrat New York Assemblyman Ron Kim says he was threatened in a phone call from Governor Cuomo due to his criticism of the governor's handling of nursing home deaths. Governor Cuomo called me directly on Thursday to threaten my career if I did not cover up for Melissa DeRosa and what she said. He tried to pressure me to issue a statement, and it was a very traumatizing experience, Kim said. He spent 10 minutes berating me, yelling at me, threatening me and my career, my livelihood.
At 1-800-CONTACTS, we're here for people like Shauna, master of the budget. With our best price guarantee, she knows she won't find cheaper contacts anywhere. Order now and save 20% on your first purchase. And don't forget to use your Flex Spending account or vision insurance benefits before they expire.
We reported earlier this hour, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is under investigation by the FBI and U.S. Attorney's Office in Brooklyn. A senior official familiar with the preliminary inquiry tells NBC News that it involves how state task force members handled coronavirus deaths at nursing homes and long-term care facilities during the pandemic. Overnight, the Cuomo administration said in a statement, the DOJ has been looking into this for months. We have been cooperating with them, and we will continue to.
All right, well, I'm not going to let that 7-minute clip of old Mika and company play through. We get the idea, but I wonder if it pains them that they even have to bother to report this stuff. Just a thought. Below is a statement from Rich Azzopardi, senior advisor to Governor Cuomo. Mr. Kim is lying about his conversation with Governor Cuomo Thursday night. I know because I was one of 3 other people in the room when the phone call occurred. At no time did anyone threaten to destroy anyone with their wrath, nor engage in a cover-up. That's beyond the pale and is unfortunately part of a years-long pattern of lies by Mr. Kim against this administration. We did ask for Mr. Kim to do the honorable thing and put out a truthful statement after he told the governor he was misquoted in a news article, which he said he tried to correct, but the reporter refused. Kim said he would correct the story and then broke his word. No surprise. Instead, over the last 6 days, he has basically accused this administration of pay-to-play and obstruction of justice. These continued falsehoods are why the governor chose to speak out today. We will not allow an unscrupulous politician to deceive New Yorkers or distort the truth. Mr. Kim's current statements do not even align with the comments he made at the meeting. See below. He is without credibility, as his own words demonstrate. Lies have caused families grieving from COVID enough pain. We understand it is our obligation to correct misstatements so families understand the true facts during COVID. Mr. Kim and the governor's office have had a long hostile relationship. The animosity initiated when Mr. Kim supported a bill protecting nail salon workers, only to do a 180-degree reversal after he received significant funding from the owners of the nail salons. He was criticized by good government groups at the time, and the governor's office called his actions into question. Mr. Kim continues to receive funding from nail salon owners and continues his attempts to remove the protections for nail salon workers. It is an ongoing unethical situation with Kim receiving funding from owners attempting to stop our efforts to protect victimized nail salon workers. We believe Kim's continuing pay-to-play actions are at a minimum unethical and when and if investigated will prove to be illegal. To be clear, neither the governor nor his aides threatened any legislators, and in fact, the meeting in question was considered positive by those who attended. It is the distortions of the meeting by those with different agendas that we object to. On the merits, Mr. Kim and the New York Post and Republicans argue that the state's March 25th order on nursing homes was bad policy. What they fail to mention is the state was following federal policy, and if the Post and Republicans want to play a political blame game, they should blame Donald Trump, and they should blame Donald Trump since last March 25th. When they promulgated the guidance, we will stick to the facts. Dr. Zucker does not believe the March 25th order was wrong. Even with the advantage of 2020 hindsight, health experts do not believe it was wrong. We believe it saved lives, and the facts demonstrate that. If, with the advantage of hindsight, we concluded the March 25th order was wrong, Commissioner Howard Zucker would admit that, and we would take action against the federal government for malpractice in issuing flawed guidance. COVID was already in the nursing homes by the time March 25th arrived. That is a proven fact. Hospital beds were critical, and that is a proven fact. People needed hospital beds with ventilators and critical care nursing staff to save their lives. We provided that. Unlike other states and countries, our hospital system was not overwhelmed, and we went from the highest infect rate to the lowest and saved lives. That is the irrefutable truth. We do agree that we did not provide enough public information quickly enough, which created a void for conspiracy theories to flourish. We accept responsibility for creating the void, and in a perfect world, the conspiracy theorists would accept responsibility also. In a more perfect world, the conspiracy theorists would stop playing politics and negatively affecting the grieving families who lost loved ones in nursing homes. Obviously, in this toxic political environment, it is not a perfect world. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio responded to the allegation saying, "The bullying by Cuomo is nothing new."
Work your style without overworking your hair. For salon-quality hair at home, Tresemme Keratin Repair with BondFlex technology builds new hair bonds with every wash. Get 20 times stronger hair with new Tresemme Keratin Repair.
Threatened him in a phone call for that criticism. Here's some of what he told us this morning.
Governor Cuomo called me the next day at 8 p.m. while I was about to bathe my kids. I was with my wife, and for 10 minutes, he berated me. He yelled at me. He told me that my career will be over. He's been biting his tongue for months against me, and I had tonight, not tomorrow, tonight, to issue a new statement, essentially asking me to lie, and asking me I heard and I saw a crime the other day. And he's asking me that I did not see that crime.
All right, let me skip ahead here to old de Blasio.
Specifically, but Governor Cuomo, you guys have jousted in the past. He says, Kim says that he got this irate phone call that started out, "Are you an honorable man?" And it went for 10 minutes of him yelling and then threats to publicly tarnish him. Have you ever heard of anything like that from Governor Cuomo? Have you ever spoken with him and anything like that happened?
Yeah, it's a sad thing to say, Mika, but that's classic Andrew Cuomo. A lot of people in New York State have received those phone calls.
I find this rather amusing. The fact that the pot is calling the kettle black between two socialists here. Finger pointing, and of course the whole stinking statement that I just covered there is nothing but a projection onto one group versus another here at the end of the day. And to say that this is Trump's fault is patently false as well. How many of you remember the post in that we had gotten behind the scenes indicating that their policy was patently against what the folks in DJT's administration had put forward? Matter of fact, many of us still have that particular document, and it is patently false on the surface. That being said, let's move over to Gateway Punt. Says New York Assembly Republicans start the impeachment process against Governor Cuomo. So things not looking too good for Alfredo's brother here. New York Assembly Republicans on Thursday began the impeachment process against Governor Cuomo. The Republican lawmakers announced a resolution to create an impeachment commission, the first step in the process of impeaching and ousting Cuomo. This announcement comes one day after New York Senate Democrats moved on Wednesday to strip Governor Andrew Cuomo of his emergency pandemic powers. Even Newsweek reported. On Thursday, Assembly Republicans announced a resolution to create an impeachment commission consisting of 8 bipartisan members of the legislature. The panel would have 60 days to conduct its work and submit its findings and recommendations to the state legislature. The Cuomo administration's nursing home cover-up is one of the most alarming scandals we've seen in state government, Assembly Minority Leader Will Barclay said in a statement. It is incumbent upon the legislature to undertake a comprehensive, bipartisan review of the Cuomo administration's policies, decisions, and actions on this matter, and render a decision on what steps must be taken to hold the governor accountable. The FBI and U.S. Attorney in Brooklyn are reportedly investigating Governor Cuomo's handling of nursing homes amid the COVID pandemic. Thousands of nursing home residents in New York died because of Andrew Cuomo's edict ordering COVID patients back into the nursing homes. Last Thursday, an audio was leaked of New York Governor Cuomo's top aide apologizing to Dem lawmakers for intentionally withholding the state's COVID nursing home death toll from them. During a press conference on Monday, Cuomo blamed conspiracy theories and misinformation and said the nursing home scandal is a political spin while he threw healthcare workers under the bus. So, again, things not looking too good for old Cuomo at the moment. The question I might have is why now? What took them so long? Why did we have to wait? Why did they not just do it while it was taking place? Oh, perhaps because they knew all along that all of this would go by the wayside after the election? Do you think? Good possibility. All right, well, not to be outdone, Newsom's still in the crosshairs as well. And we get this out of Kyle Becker News here. Says Newsom's California kicks strict signature match into overdrive, threatening recall election. Now, wait a minute here. So help me understand this, folks. You guys out there in the YouTube, Twitch, DLive, and over on Tiger Network. So if I understand this correctly, when we vote for the presidential election or midterms, we don't have to have a signature. But when we go to recall somebody for their malfeasance and misdeeds, apparently those signatures matter? You don't say. Anyway, carrying forward, says California Governor Gavin Newsom has been facing a serious effort to get him removed from office. However, new developments indicate that the state of California that he runs is pulling out all the stops to protect him. The petition, Rescue California, has gathered over 1.5 million signatures, enough to qualify to put his recall up for a vote. But the state of California is poised to go into overdrive to throw out signatures that do not match exactly. Local NBC affiliate KCRA3 provides a stunning update on the number of votes that have qualified thus far. And I guess even before I go further than that, this report may be just a little bit premature because I think the folks in that are leading that effort, the gentleman behind Rescue California who also led it, I believe, against Gray Davis many years ago, specifically stated that they're actually going to try and get about 400,000 signatures more than what is needed. I believe 1.4 was the figure that was needed. They're actually going to try and get 1.8 or 1.9, somewhere in that neighborhood. More than enough to cover any sort of attempts to try and protect Newsom here. So carrying on Tuesday, KCRA3 called each of the 58 county registrars' office. We heard back from 45 of them. Based on KCRA3's independent reporting, as of Wednesday, a total of 1,020,165 signatures had been submitted. However, only 560,364 are valid. But again, I digress. I suppose it's, not lost on any of us here that they would consider doing something of that nature with any sort of voting rolls. Now, would they? It's important to note, KCRA3 did not get current totals from some large counties like LA County. We can anticipate the total number of valid signatures to increase. The effort needs more than 1.4 million signatures to get the recall petition on the ballot. Signatures can be submitted until March 17th. If the rate of 55% conversion does not increase, it would represent a major boondoggle. California's suddenly renewed interest in strict signature matching when it comes to the Newsom recall petition contrasts with its comparatively low 0.6% ballot rejection rate in the 2020 election. No irony or hypocrisy going on here, is there? California election officials announced Friday that 99.4% of more than 15 million mail-in ballots were verified and counted in the November election, a rejection rate notably lower than the March primary, even though more than twice as many people voted. Former acting director of national intelligence Richard Grenell, who is being pressed to run against the California governor, gave a sober assessment of the situation. Grenell says this via tweet. Says, "You've never seen signature verification like they're about to do in California." Steve Glazer is considered a moderate, and he's saying everyone is focused on reducing the number of signatures. Gavin Newsom has a strategy to ensure there's no recall vote. And there he says that yet again. Says earlier, Grenell reacted to the Newsom recall effort in an interview with Fox News' Maria Bartiromo. Says, "Look, here's my position. I just saw your interview with Ron DeSantis, and I'm hoping that he can run for governor of Florida and governor of California," Grenell said. "I'm not sure that couldn't have somebody going back and forth. Certainly would do a better job than Gavin Newsom. We have a disaster here in California, and I'm not trying to be cute about your question, but I think what we have to do is concentrate first on the signature that we're gathering and the verified signatures." Grenell also shared information that Newsom's recall signatures were going to be thrown out due to strict signature matching. The state of California is controlled by a whole bunch of Democrats. One-party rule. They're going to go through every single signature we have and throw out ones. The verification process is going to be unlike anything we've ever seen, Grenell said. "We still have a long way to go to gather signatures to put this on the ballot because they're going to play games. They already are. So I would just say we've got to keep focused on getting rid of Gavin Newsom. Donald Trump, of course, would not be able to win California. Biden received at least 10 million votes to Trump's 5.5 million, which is a margin of victory of 64% to 33.9%. However, Donald Trump received the most votes of any Republican in California, even more than former California resident, the late Ronald Reagan. Trump was recently reported by Bloomberg TV as considering jumping into the fray to sway voters in a California recall election. Robert Barnes, a constitutional attorney, notes that California resident Kanye West was removed from the 2020 election ticket due to signature matching. "How did Democrats kick Kanye West off the ballot in his home state?" he tweeted. "By demanding a strict signature match. Guess what rate of signatures were rejected by the election officials? Over half. Yet the signatures magically matched for the general election?" The Rescue California petition drive is thus pushing to drive far beyond the 1.4 million minimum for signatures and has set a target of at least 1.9 million, according to organizer Thomas Del Beccaro. And there we see his tweet right there. The lack of strict signature matching in 2020 elections in swing states such as Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Michigan, leading to lower ballot rejection rates, was a key complaint by former President Donald Trump's re-election campaign. Meanwhile, in California, these reports indicate that the signature matching is going into overdrive in a bid to protect Newsom. The rationale for recalling Gavin Newsom, according to one of the Rescue California organizers. California is heading off an economic cliff, and Governor Gavin Newsom is driving the car. Voters are angry, and they have a right to be. Newsom has devastated the state's economy with his dictatorial on-again, off-again shutdown orders. We pay the highest taxes in the nation for a state government that treats businesses and middle-income families as the enemy, catering exclusively to moneyed special interest in Sacramento. Voters have a recourse, the power of recall. We did it in 2003, and we can do it again with your help. If these early reports on California's recall election petition are any indication, voters are going to have to kick it into overdrive themselves to beat the rigged system. Where have we heard about a rigged system before? I digress. In any case, flash over to New Jersey. And of course, Mr. Murphy's got his share of problems going on here. He's got a little visa fraud scheme going on. Governor Phil Murphy's professional soccer team named in immigration scandal. Will this be his undoing? Don't know. Sky Blue FC, the professional women's soccer team that is co-owned by Governor Phil Murphy and his wife Tammy, has been named in court documents pertaining to a visa scandal. Starting to get the idea on why leaving that border wide open is so important. Pushing for illegal immigrants to magically become citizens, wave the magic wand. Here we see out of U.S. Attorney M.A., the former COO of Global Premier Soccer, a now defunct youth soccer organization, formerly based in Waltham, Massachusetts, was charged today in connection with a wide-ranging visa fraud scheme. And there we see the DOJ piece there. It says, while neither Governor Murphy nor his wife are being charged or accused of any wrongdoing, the soccer team is one of 7 professional teams that allegedly engaged in a visa program that illegally brought foreign coaches and scouts to the United States. According to the Department of Justice, the center of the investigation and alleged criminal conduct relating to visa fraud stems around the now defunct Global Premier Soccer. On February 12th, the DOJ announced that 39-year-old Justin Capel, the former COO of GPS, was being charged in connection with a wide-ranging visa fraud conspiracy. Conspiracy, not a conspiracy theory. The purported visa scheme enacted by Capel and other GPS executives and employees that have yet to be named was said to have transpired between some point in 2016 up until October of 2019. In said alleged scheme, the DOJ stated that Capel conspired with other GPS executives and employees and with GPS's outside counsel to defraud several federal agencies by submitting fraudulent visa petitions in order to secure work visas for hundreds of GPS employees. In the simplest of terms, to describe what this alleged immigration scheme aimed to do was that immigration officials were misled with falsified visa petitions that claimed potential visa beneficiaries would be functioning as professional soccer coaches and scouts. And here we see Nicole Marie Dirks says, Go Local Prov, U.S. Attorney indictment of Massachusetts sports exec for visa conspiracy tied to soccer team owned by a New Jersey governor. I wonder to what degree he knew what was going on. Perhaps we'll find out. But from what the DOJ alleges, these visa beneficiaries weren't being allocated to professional sports teams as scouts or assistant coaches. They were instead allegedly working as youth soccer coaches for GPS. The petitions falsely stated that the beneficiaries would be working as scouts or assistant coaches for the professional teams, when in reality they were employed only as youth soccer coaches by GPS. As part of the conspiracy, Capel and others submitted phony employment contracts between professional teams and the purported beneficiaries. It is also alleged that Capel and co-conspirators created fraudulent coaching licenses for the beneficiaries, which were included as part of the visa application packages. Of course, this is where the professional soccer teams, like the Murphy's Sky Blue FC, come into the fold. Apparently, in order for GPS to petition for these visa, they needed to reference professional soccer teams that these visa beneficiaries would be allocated to. One of the unidentified co-conspirators in this case allegedly submitted a petition in Sky Blue FC's behalf to secure 7 P1S visas, which said category of visas are meant for support, like coaches and the ilk, of professional athletes. And here we see NorthJersey.com state Sky Blue is named as one of 7 clubs that participated in a visa program that illegally brought foreign coaches and scouts to the United States, according to documents filed in U.S. District Court in Boston on Friday. 1 month after those 7 petitions for visa beneficiaries was filed, then the same co-conspirator submitted another petition that on behalf of Sky Blue FC trying to acquire 6 more P1S visas. The common theme in all this, as alleged by officials, is that these P1S visa recipients were never allocated to Sky Blue FC, but to youth soccer endeavors under GPS's watch. Governor Murphy reportedly admitted that he hardly ever gets involved with the day-to-day efforts of Sky Blue FC, noting that he and his wife only own a big chunk of the team and not much else. Yeah, so they only own a chunk, but I wonder what sort of kickbacks they may have gotten as part of this scheme. You can bet your bottom dollar that there were dollars involved. Says I don't have any involvement day to day in running the team, which is good news for everybody. There's one alleged email communication where Governor Murphy was asked back in May of 2016 by Sky Blue FC co-owner Stephen Tamaraz if it's okay for Dick, presumably attorney Richard Howe, to have one conversation with the GPS CEO and the Frogman lawyer to confirm whether the scouting structure works, to which Governor Murphy replied, absolutely. But outside of the aforementioned, there's nothing yet that implies Governor Murphy or the other co-owners of the soccer team were in on the alleged visa scandal. According to the DOJ, former GPS COO Capel has reportedly already agreed to plead guilty to conspiracy to commit visa fraud, but there's no determined hearing date on when that plea bargain will be introduced and accepted. So, I guess that being said, we'll have to see how that pans out and whether or not we'll get some of these folks to rat their uppers out or if it will indeed be uncovered. All right, well, Gretchen Whitmer, of course, we've seen what she has done over the course of last year, her dictatorial style up in Michigan, obviously knocked down by their Supreme Court, even in Michigan, only to hand it off to her cohorts and that in the executive department and carry on. And by the way, don't go buy seeds from your local stores because that's roped off. Can't have that. So anyway, LifeZet has this. Gretchen Whitmer humiliated after Billboard names her as Indiana Business Person of the Year. So, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer was publicly humiliated this week when a satirical billboard went up naming her as the Indiana Business Person of the Year. The message was put up on dozens of billboards that are owned by the Swick Broadcasting Company. She has destroyed them, Michigan's retail business. Stephen Swick, who owns businesses in both states, told Michigan Capital Confidential, "It is a travesty. It's just the frustration over her policies and actions." Continuing on, it says, though he added that the message was more satire than anything, the Indiana Chamber did not agree, and it publicly denounced the billboards. It's 100% false, Vice President of PR and Communications Rebecca Patrick told Breitbart News. I'm not sure if it's a Photoshop or someone is using our name on an actual billboard, but we had nothing to do with it, and our 2020 Business Leader of the Year was Dave Ricks of Eli Lilly. So, continues on, says Swick has reportedly put up other billboards that are critical of Whitmer and her policies, according to the publication. One pictured an image of the Indiana flag and a caption that said, "The great state of Indiana welcomes Michiganders to a free-to-roam state. We thank you for the revenue." Another pictured a Michiganian as an attempt long-haired caveman alongside a well-groomed Hoosier holding a pair of scissors. The billboard said, "Current look at the border. Indiana salons and barber shops are open." A third billboard showed actor John Candy playing a guard at Wally World, a National Lampoon's Vacation movie, warning drivers, "Sorry folks, Michigan is closed again." Instead of backing down, Swick stood by his billboards. "People want to get back to a sense of normalcy," Swick said. "They're all flooding over the borders to Indiana because of Whitmer's orders that have shut down non-essential businesses and restricted restaurant operations. I think her overreaching restrictiveness has put Michigan businesses and industries behind the eight ball," he said. And of course, if you recall, back in the November-December timeframe, there were efforts to actually try to recall Whitmer. I'm not sure at the end of the day where that still resides, if it is even still moving forward at this point. But my guess is that probably some of the legislators in Michigan are probably also on the take, and chances are it's probably not going to go anywhere. Just my take, and I've got nothing to corroborate that or back that up, but just my initial thoughts on it. In any case, moving along, we also get to Illinois here. Pritzker here also catching some heat, and of course this state here, the land of Lincoln, has been in his crosshairs for the better part of a year with ridiculous lockdown strategies, extending his emergency orders beyond 30 days, certainly been sued in federal courts, things of that nature, and nothing has been done. So even here in the last week, he's issued his state of the state business and tried pinning this on Republicans, which is absolutely absurd because they control everything in the state from the legislature to every single department, you name it. So it's patently false as well. So out of the center square, we get Illinois GOP launches firepritzker.org while Democrats say Republicans don't have pandemic recovery plan. And again, it's not the Republicans' fault. The majority in the legislature is on the Dems' hand. Just more finger-pointing. The Illinois Republican Party has launched a new campaign targeting Governor J.B. Pritzker with the website firepritzker.org. The campaign was announced Wednesday before the governor's budget address, is reminiscent of the GOP's Fire Madigan campaign that targeted former House Speaker Michael Madigan out of Chicago. From Cairo to Chicago, Quincy to Danville, the people of Illinois are saying enough is enough. Illinois GOP Chairman Don Tracy said in a statement Wednesday, "No more tax hikes, unbalanced budgets, and radical leftist agendas. And no more unaccountable rule by one man shutting down our economy and destroying Illinois' future. It's time we fire Pritzker." And of course, before that, we had, oh man, the name just slipped my mind here, a Republican in that. In any case, it's truly laughable how many governors now we've gone through, and of course Illinois is known for throwing so many governors behind bars. It's not even funny. Pritzker ran as an autocrat who would get back the basics of running government, Tracy said. Instead, we got a campaign to raise taxes, a police reform bill that makes us less safe, indoctrination of our students, an incompetent unemployment system, over 30 dead veterans at a state facility, and king-like rule during the pandemic, and definitely shutting down our economy and never consulting the legislature. Before announcing the campaign, Tracy told WMAY his efforts are to get back to promoting core Republican principles to expand the party's base. Honest government, stronger economy, stronger families, fiscal sanity, more school choice, equal opportunity, and strong public safety, because I think most Illinoisans believe in those core values, and if they do, they're really Republicans, not Democrats, Tracy said. Illinois won't be helped by one-party rule from the Dems, he said. What exactly is the GOP plan for the state of Illinois, other than denying science and voting against COVID relief funds? DPI Executive Director Mary Morrissey said, "We've heard the same tired attacks against Governor Pritzker since he took office, but we've yet to hear any solid plans to support our workers and families and move past this catastrophic pandemic. I guess we'll keep waiting." Tracy acknowledged to WMAY Friday the uphill battle in campaign cash against Democratic dollars controlled by former House Speaker Michael Madigan. "It's not going to be easy," Tracy said. "We have like $200,000, and Democrat Party of Illinois Chairman Michael Madigan has like millions, multi-millions of dollars to compete with," Tracy said Friday. Tracy said he believes the message of free markets, strong families, and fiscal sanity will resonate. "We need to expand the base. We need to reach out to youth more, and that is also part of our strategy," Tracy said. Tracy also criticized the Pritzker administration over the loss of 80,000 Illinoisans to other states. And that's probably one of the critical things right there here in this state, is that so many people have left the state because of their policies where they think they're going to tax the rich more and more. All that does is cause people to just, move to lesser tax states. And that's going to be their problem. Who the hell wants to come back to Illinois when they continue to tax the hell out of you, one of the highest property tax states in the nation, et cetera, et cetera. And by the way, Bruce Rauner was the guy I was trying to think of prior to Pritzker. Basically, he was just a Republican lapdog billionaire who didn't really do much either. The only saving grace for him is that he's not in prison, unlike some of the previous governors. All right, well, that being said, let's move into some other news outside of the old governors and ways people are fighting back. Over to Virginia. Over in Epoch Times, 3rd Virginia County passes resolution to condemn China's organ transplant abuses. So I suppose if by chance you're in need of an organ, transplant list, or otherwise, they're doing a campaign over there to make sure you understand not to head over to China and try and get said organs. And many of you, I'm sure, are well aware of their practices in China. So, another Virginia county has adopted a resolution to curb organ transplant tourism to China, making it the third one since January to take a stance against Beijing's forced organ harvesting practices. It's a travesty and completely unacceptable, said Yesley Vega, supervisor for Coles District in Prince William County, who initiated the bill. Allegations that the Chinese regime has been mass killing prisoners of conscience and extracting their organs for transplant first emerged in 2006, when whistleblowers approached the Epoch Times to expose the issue. It has since drawn international attention, with the London-based People's Tribunal in 2019 concluding that such practices have been committed for years throughout China on a significant scale. Imprisoned adherents of Falun Gong, a spiritual practice that has been subject to brutal persecution for the past 2 decades, remained the principal victims for the abuse, the tribunal found, calling the actions indicative of the crime of genocide. It says we need to take action. There has to be consequences to what's happening, said Vega in an Epoch Times interview. This is clearly a violation of the law, and it's an inhumane act that's happening and needs to stop. Passed on February 16th, the resolution aims to educate its over 460,000 residents about the risks of traveling to China for organ transplants so that they don't become unintentional accomplices of the illicit act. It came after around 100 local citizens highlighted the issue in a petition to the county's Board of Supervisors, the bill stated. The atrocity, Vega said, calls for everyone to speak up and hold the Chinese regime accountable. We can't turn a blind eye or pretend like we can't hear what's happening, she said. And here we see the resolution and that they passed. Carrying on, Falun Gong consists of moral teachings based on 3 core principles: truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance, along with 5 sets of gentle exercises. It had an estimated 70 to 100 million adherents in the late 1990s before the communist regime launched a campaign in 1999 to eradicate the practice. Local residents Lin Pham, a Falun Gong practitioner, applauded the action in a speech at the February 16th board meeting. She said that the resolution was necessary to stop more than human rights abuses given the limited media coverage on the issue. A number of Falun Gong survivors of persecution who settled in Virginia have related stories of torture and being subjected to medical procedures for organ matching while in prison, blood tests, x-rays, and sonograms, indicating they were being treated as potential organ donors, Pham said. Harvesting the organs of Falun Gong practitioners has set a precedent in China. If it remains unchallenged, the CCP may well use it to suppress and persecute other groups, which will cost even more innocent lives, she said. Jim Garagosian, who lives on the west side of the county and also a Falun Gong adherent, said that the Chinese regime has gotten away with unconscionable human rights violations through extensive influence operations targeting every facet of American society. The Chinese Communist Party is targeting the most vulnerable members of our communities, the terminally ill, by telling them that if they come to China, they don't have to wait months or years for an organ transplant, he said. They just don't tell us where the organs are coming from. Gregosian added that the Americans have seen unprecedented calls for justice for all people around the country and around the world. In the spirit of inclusiveness, the resolution is one step closer to, quote, help bring justice to all people, including Falun Gong practitioners in China, end quote, he said. Several county residents present at the session also voiced their support for the board's action. Harvesting organs and doing things like that are a great evil, and we have to crush that evil, said Barbara Dodge, who had years of experience working at the American Red Cross. Her husband, retired U.S. Army Colonel George Dodge, said he has heard about the persecution of Falun Gong for years. He described the forced organ harvesting of Falun Gong practitioners as very tragic. They really are not a threat to the Chinese government, he said in an interview. They are a peaceful people. They are not doing anything threatening to the government. The government should leave them alone. So, aside from that, we get into this as well, talking about abortions and where South Carolina is headed. Again, out of Epoch Times here in the last couple days, South Carolina governor signs the fetal heartbeat bill that bans most abortions. So, South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster signed the fetal heartbeat bill into law on Thursday, a day after the legislation passed the state's lower chamber. Today, we made history. The heartbeat bill is now the law of South Carolina, and we will defend it with everything in us, because there is nothing more important than protecting the sanctity of life, McMaster said in a statement on Twitter. The law, known as the South Carolina Fetal Heartbeat and Protection from Abortion Act, will ban most abortions in the state once a fetal heartbeat is detected, which is usually at around 6 weeks of pregnancy. The House gave its approval to the bill in a 79-35 vote on Wednesday. The Senate had already passed the bill in late January. South Carolina joins dozens of states, such as Arkansas, Georgia, Kentucky, Louisiana, and Ohio, that have passed their own version of the heartbeat bills in recent years. Many of these bills have led to a series of legal challenges in courts. These states are hoping that the lawsuits could be a vehicle to challenge Roe v. Wade, which classifies the right to choose to have an abortion as quote-unquote fundamental in the Supreme Court. Several courts across the country have already invalidated the heartbeat bill. In June last year, the Supreme Court struck down a Louisiana law that required doctors who perform abortions to have hospital admitting privileges close to where the procedure takes place. The court said the law was unconstitutional. It found that the Louisiana law was almost identical to a 2016 Texas law that had already been struck down by the same court, and that the Texas law placed a, quote, substantial obstacle in the path of women seeking an abortion, end quote. The South Carolina law requires doctors to try and find a detectable fetal heartbeat before an abortion can occur. If a heartbeat is detected, then an abortion can only take place if the pregnancy was a result of rape, incest, or if the mother's life is in danger. A doctor who offers to do the procedure in cases of rape and incest is required to report the crime to local law enforcement. The requirements under the law are subjected to exceptions when a medical emergency exists. An abortionist who violates the law may be guilty of a felony and can be fined $10,000 and possibly face jail time of up to 2 years. The bill will not punish a pregnant woman for having an illegal abortion. In 2017, 5,120 abortions were performed in South Carolina, although not all of the abortions were provided to residents of the state, according to the Guttmacher Institute. Moreover, the abortion rate in the state fell by 17% between 2014 and 2017, from 6.4 to 5.3 abortions per 1,000 women of reproductive age. South Carolina abortions represent 0.6% of all abortions in the United States. So, good progress being made there. Again, one might question the quote-unquote constitutionality that these folks claim that they have under the U.S. Constitution. I see no place in the United States Constitution, Bill of Rights, where any of that would even be construed to mean anything that they're purporting here. So, in my opinion, it has no legs to stand on. But yet, you get people like the ACLU and various other groups to pop in there and wield the stick, and lo and behold, we get ourselves in the situation we find ourselves in. So, outside of that, talk a little bit about some Second Amendment related stuff, because old creepy Uncle Joe and company, I'm sure, are just waiting to tear into the Second Amendment, issue whatever decrees and edicts, and maybe even some legislation. But some counties and that around the country are already getting ahead of it, as they all should. Camden County becomes Missouri's first Second Amendment sanctuary county, and that's out of Gateway Pundit. And for those that may remember here, perhaps dating back a few years ago, many counties were declaring themselves Second Amendment sanctuary counties shortly after they started to declare cities and states and that sanctuary cities for illegals. well, the idea sprung up that Second Amendment sanctuary counties, well, if they're going to do that, then we're going to do this type scenario. And we saw a number of counties take off and do that over the last several years. So, Camden County made national news back in the summer of 2020 after a video of hundreds of partygoers at a giant pool party at the Lake of the Ozarks went viral. And there we see the social distancing is not a crime. Sheriff's office has no authority to enforce. Missouri sheriff responds after video from giant pool party at Lake of Ozarks goes viral, to which many liberal heads exploded who were Karens and Kens touting masks. Recently, Camden County was back in the news. Camden County is Missouri's first Second Amendment sanctuary county. So via sanctuarycounties.com, and apparently I didn't know that was a thing, but apparently you can check out how many counties are underneath the umbrella there on that site. On January 19th, 2021, Camden County, Missouri commissioners passed Missouri's first Second Amendment sanctuary ordinance. One interesting aspect of this ordinance, aside from it actually being an ordinance in the first place, is the fact that they are actually calling out all laws, orders, rules, and regulations, whether past, present, or future, which infringe on the people's right to keep and bear arms. This is a bold step and not one that we have seen many other counties make. They are not only declaring their opposition to future infringements to the Second Amendment, but also ones from the past. It's a gun sanctuary ordinance. It says all federal acts, laws, orders, rules, and regulations, whether past, present, or future, which infringe on the people's right to keep and bear arms as guaranteed by the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution and Article 1, Section 23 of the Missouri Constitution, shall be invalid in this county, shall not be recognized by this county, are specifically rejected by this county, and shall be considered null and void and of no effect in this county. Bravo. I'll give them a hand clap on that one. Such federal acts, laws, orders, rules, and regulations include, but are not limited to, A, the provisions of the Federal Gun Control Act of 1934, the provisions of the Federal Gun Control Act of 1968, and C, any tax, levy, fee, or stamp imposed on firearms, firearm accessories, or ammunition not common to all other goods and services which could have a chilling effect on the purchase of or ownership of those items by law-abiding citizens. D says any registering or tracking of firearms, firearm accessories, or ammunition which could have a chilling effect on the purchase or ownership of those items by law-abiding citizens. E, any registering or tracking of the owners of firearms, firearm accessories, or ammunition which could have a chilling effect on the purchase or ownership of those items by law-abiding citizens. F, any act forbidding the possession, ownership, or use of or any transfer of any type of firearm, firearm accessory, or ammunition by law-abiding citizens. G, any act ordering the confiscation of firearms, firearm accessories, or ammunition from law-abiding citizens, etc., etc. And apparently that'll go on for a little bit here. And we'll bounce over to it. We got a little bit of time here. So E, F, G, yeah, it looks like this is going to go on for a little bit here, so probably a good place to break from it. But nonetheless, I'll drop the link out in chat. You guys can peruse that at your leisure. Bottom line, I would say kudos to them for putting the thought in that they did for their ordinance and that they put in. Again, this just does exactly what we, the people, should be doing under the 10th Amendment, right? At the end of the day, anything that is not reserved to the federal government is reserved to the state. Anything that the state does not do is reserved to the people. And, of course, to the counties by extension as well. And so, as these idiots in Washington think that they know better, send their goons out or whatever to try and thwart the ability of us to lawfully carry arms, buy arms, what have you, it's null and void from the start because it infringes. And I'm not sure exactly what is so damn hard for them to understand in a court of law anything about shall not infringe. Seems like it's pretty black and white to me. All right, well, that being said, we also get this. it's not that we're the only ones pushing back against the tyranny here in these states. We're seeing the very same thing play out even down in Australia. If you're not paying attention as to what's been going on down there, Australia is basically taking on Silicon Valley at the moment. Between Google and Facebook, they are both now in the crosshairs, as it were, for actually paying not organizers, but outlets, various news outlets and whatnot, for carrying their publications on their various platforms. And so Google has said, all right, we're going to take a little bit of a wait-and-see approach. They actually bowed a little bit and says, all right, we'll allow you the platform to do that. We will pay you a stipend per article or what have you. Facebook, on the other hand, nah, they're not having it. And basically they just says, well, screw Australia. We're going to block everything Australia, anything to do with Australia on the platform. And that's exactly what they did. So, ex-Australian Facebook CEO urges users to delete the app over news ban. So, pretty telling where this is headed. The former chief executive of Facebook's Australian business urged users to delete the social network's app in response to Mark Zuckerberg's sad decision to block news from the platform in the country. And it was more than just the news, folks. It was any sort of organizations, any sort of police organizations, anything to do with governments, anything Australian. Boom. They just made a little algo change and away they went. Stephen Sheeler, the ex-boss of Facebook Australia and New Zealand, said in an interview that Facebook's controversial move looks and feels ugly and blasted CEO Zuckerberg's motivations. It shouldn't have happened, but unfortunately it did, Sheeler told The Australian, but there's no good answers. But at Facebook, nobody ever loses their jobs. I'm a proud ex-Facebooker, but over the years I get more and more exasperated. For Facebook and Mark, it's too much about the money and the power, and not about the good, Sheeler said. Imagine if a Chinese company, for example, had done this. We would be up in arms. All Australians should be quite alarmed by this. The former CEO, who resigned from the tech giant in 2017, encouraged Australians to send a strong message to the company by deleting the app, while calling for more regulation of Facebook. The outrage comes a day after Facebook said it would block Australian users from reading or sharing news on its platform, a decision that came in response to Australia's proposed new media bargaining law, which would require tech giants to make such payments. On Thursday, Australians woke up to find large swaths of non-news pages in Australia banned as Facebook attempted to remove news content from its platform. Dozens of Facebook pages belonging to charities, small businesses, public services, and governments were scrubbed from the site, raising concerns that people could miss out on vital information. For instance, Save the Children Australia, the Hobart Women's Shelter, and the Kids Cancer Project had their pages pulled from the platform, as did the Brisbane City Council, South Australia Health, and the Bureau of Meteorology. By the evening local time on Thursday, some of these pages had already been restored. In a move that has caused some amusement, Facebook also blocked its own page in Australia. So a Facebook rep told CNBC Thursday that it would reverse some of the bans. The actions we're taking are focused on restricting publishers and people in Australia from sharing or viewing Australian and international news content, the rep said. As the law does not provide clear guidance on the definition of news content, we have taken a broad definition in order to respect the law as drafted. However, we will reverse any pages that are inadvertently impacted. Concerns have been raised that misinformation will be spread on the site by bloggers and conspiracy theorists now that legitimate news sources have been removed. Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison said Facebook's actions were as arrogant as they were disappointing. Australian Treasurer Josh Frydenberg said at a media briefing Thursday that Facebook was wrong to move in the way it has. Facebook's actions were unnecessary, he said. They were heavy-handed, and they will damage its reputation here in Australia. Their decision to block Australians' access to government sites, be they about support through the pandemic, mental health, emergency services, the Bureau of Meteorology, were completely unrelated to the media code, which is yet to pass through the Senate, Frydenberg added. Facebook's decision to block the news came the same day that rival Google, which was also subject to the same law, announced it struck a multi-year deal with News Corp, the largest owner of newspapers by circulation in Australia, to pay for its content. News Corp is also the parent company of the New York Post and publishes the Wall Street Journal, Barron's, and MarketWatch, in addition to numerous newspapers overseas. So, interesting to see the tech oligarchs, the Silicon Valley hucksters, and that flexing their muscle as if to say, no, you aren't the government now. You are not the dictator of information flow at this point. We are. And that's kind of what that looks like at the onset. And we'll see how this pans out at the end of the day, who's going to be on the right side, or, as we've witnessed here in the United States, a lot of people jumping off of these platforms, and who has benefited. Well, Parler's back up, yes. Gab certainly has taken on quite an influx, as well as other platforms like Telegram and things of that nature. And so, perhaps, maybe Facebook is just trying to make themselves obsolete and go by the way of MySpace. I don't know. We'll have to see. And last but not least on today, as this is kind of a day of revolting against the man, as it were, kind of the theme, I guess. What about our 10th Amendment here? What should we be doing? I brought that up just a minute ago. Well, again, rights not reserved by the government to the people ultimately come down to the states and ultimately to us. And so state legislators must push back against federal and executive branch overreach. And that's kind of been the theme with what we've seen here today. Not just with the governors and people pushing back against their little diktats and that they've had throughout all this COVID business, but you're seeing it through the abortion measures in South Carolina, the Second Amendment sanctuary counties and that we saw in Missouri, etc., etc. So American thought leaders had this the other day. It is a good watch. I would encourage folks to check it out. I'm going to go ahead and drop the link in chat. You guys can listen to this. I'm just going to play a couple minutes of this just so you guys can get a feel for it. But President Joe Biden has issued a record number of executive orders in his first month in office with far-reaching implications. The North Dakota House recently passed a bill to create a joint committee examining federal laws and executive orders. The bill aims to nullify federal orders within the state if they violate the U.S. Constitution. Hey, what a novel idea. How would that work exactly? What powers do states actually have to counter the federal government? At the border, there are fears of growing crisis after President Biden suspended deportations for 100 days, stopped border wall construction, and stopped the Remain in Mexico program. Today we sit down with Daniel Horowitz, senior editor of The Blaze and host of the Conservative Review podcast. He's also the author of the book Stolen Sovereignty. This is American Thought Leaders, and I'm Jan Jakilek. So, like I said, I'll let a little bit of this play through, maybe the first minute or two before we break. But again, here's what it highlights. At the end of the day, all these diktats, these decrees, these executive orders that Biden has put through over the last several days, yes, there are measures that the states and we the people can take to counter these. Aside from what they cited here with North Dakota, obviously one of the first ones was a Keystone XL pipeline. You're getting a band of attorney generals in various states to counter that. I think there's a consortium of about a dozen, I want to say, at the moment. You also see folks like Ken Paxton, AG down in Texas, also thwarting some efforts to prohibit any sort of immigration controls and things of that nature done by executive decree, challenging that in court immediately in order to prevent those measures from taking place. So let's let a little of this play through.
President Biden has issued a record number of executive orders in his first month in office, with far-reaching implications. The North Dakota House passed a bill to create a joint committee examining federal laws and executive orders. The bill aims to nullify federal orders within the state if they violate the U.S. Constitution. How would that work exactly? What powers do states actually have to counter the federal government? At the border, there are fears of a growing crisis after President Biden suspended deportations for 100 days, stopped border wall construction, and stopped the Remain in Mexico program. Today, we sit down with Daniel Horowitz, senior editor of The Blaze and host of the Conservative Review podcast. He's also the author of the new book, Stolen Sovereignty. This is American Thought Leaders, and I'm Jan Jekielek. As you may know, YouTube has demonetized our channel. To stay connected, please make sure to sign up to our mailing list in the description below so you never miss an episode. Daniel Horowitz, such a pleasure to have you on American Thought Leaders.
Great to be with you today. So much to talk about.
So Daniel, President Biden has issued a record number of executive orders in his first month of office, some of them basically within days of coming into office. And obviously these have very far-reaching implications. And, you've actually been writing about states thinking about how to actually approach this and asserting their own rights. The North Dakota House passed a bill to create this kind of joint committee that would look at executive orders and federal laws, basically with the idea of being able to nullify them if they violate the U.S. Constitution. That's pretty fascinating and not necessarily something that's kind of in the collective consciousness. I mean, how would this actually work? What kinds of powers do states have to enact these sorts of things?
Sure. I mean, what people need to understand is that there are three branches of government, both at the state level and at the federal level. And each branch of government has a requirement to only use its powers in concert with the Constitution. So contrary to popular notion, it's not just the courts that get to determine constitutionality. Every branch of government equally has to determine the right way to go with the Constitution, because otherwise you don't have co-equal branches. And the founders were very clear about this. Madison, even Hamilton, who wanted a strong federal government. And having three branches of government and then a federalist system where you have a federal government, but then 50 states eventually, and even local governments, that wasn't a bug, but a feature of the system. Because
I guess I'll pause there. And this is the hard part right here, because you would think people would understand this, but think of how much our society has been dumbed down, right? People barely know civics. They have no problem following decrees and proclamations and things of that by governors and that have no basis in law, period. Legislators in the various state houses are the ones who are supposed to draft up the laws, get them passed, and the executive is supposed to be the one to faithfully execute said laws. And in the event that there's a law that, say, the executive does not like, he has the power to veto. And if by chance there are enough votes in the legislative branch of the states, even the federal government, and they don't like the fact that they vetoed a law that they wish to propose, then they can use a 2/3 majority to override said veto. But the problem is that these folks and that most of the country has been dumbed down to the point that they have no idea what's going on, how laws come to be. We just follow ad hoc rules because thus saith, and we stick signs on the door and put a mask on. Then guess what? We just start following it like sheep, and we don't know any better. So unfortunately, as rudimentary as what he just stated there, taking us back to the very, very basics of having three branches of government, and not only the federal government, but also the state governments, you would think probably it would go without saying. We shouldn't even have to bring that up, but yet we do. All right, well, I'm going to leave that there. Again, I dropped a link out there. You guys can check that out. It's about an hour in length. If you've not ever checked out Epoch Times, get over, subscribe to their channel, American Thought Leaders. Once or twice a week, they usually have some pretty good shows over there. Yes, they've been demonetized. You can always support them, get a hold of their publication and that, donate to them. They're very good. I tend to use a lot of their articles and that in the broadcasts as well. So get over and support them as well. All right, well, that is going to do it for the broadcast here today. Like I said, a little bit of a Rebel Friday, as it were. Some of the goings-on against the various governors and whatnot, and a lot of governments and that standing up around the country and the states. So more to come on that, and we'll see you back here shortly on the next one. Take care. God bless, everybody.